the next piece of evidence that we want to look at is the blood or breath sample testing, if you did either of those. So let's start with blood samples. One of the things that we pride ourselves here at Michael and Associates is that our lawyers are certified through a company up in Chicago called Axion Labs. It's a year-long program, and it's very intense, costs a lot of money. Very few lawyers in the state have gone through the trouble of being certified in this way. But it's really important for DWI attorneys to understand at a very, very high level the science behind these blood samples. And that's what this certification process does. So we have lawyers who understand the inner workings of how the state laboratory that tests your blood actually goes about that testing. The machine that they use is called a gas chromatograph, and it's very complicated and it's very technical, and it requires a very high level of understanding of the science and chemistry and biology that this machine uses to determine how much alcohol is in your system. So we are able to dive in to do our own independent analysis of your lab results that came back from the state lab that show how much alcohol they claim was in your system. And based on our independent review, we can determine whether or not the state lab made any mistakes while testing your sample. If we can find any of those mistakes, we can have a hearing in front of the judge or in front of the jury, depending on if we take the case to trial, and show them that these lab results are not as accurate as the state would like you to believe. That in fact, their laboratory made all of these errors while testing our client's sample. And for those reasons, they should either suppress this evidence, they being the judge, the court, should either suppress this evidence and keep it from being used against our client, or convincing a jury that they cannot rely on this evidence and they should ignore it. If we're successful at challenging a blood sample, a lab result for a blood sample, it is very, very likely at that point that we can get the entire case dismissed. Now, the other type of sample is a breath sample, and that's through a breathalyzer. Most people are familiar with sort of how that works. What people don't realize is that these machines that they use at local police departments, these breathalyzing machines, are again not very accurate, and they're far from being as accurate as the state would like the general public to believe. There is a huge margin of error for these machines, and most importantly, they have to be maintained and serviced and calibrated precisely for them to be operating at their best, which rarely they are. And so our office goes through the trouble. Again, this is one of the things we pride ourselves on, this attention to detail. We will double check that all of the service records, the calibration records, the maintenance records that the police departments are required by law to have on hand are in order. And if any of those records are missing, or if those records show that that machine was malfunctioning or hadn't been calibrated recently or wasn't calibrated correctly, then it gives us a lot of ammunition to prove to a jury that they cannot rely on any of the results that that breathalyzer spit out for our client. So if we can chip away and poke holes into the reliability of the breath or blood sample that our client supplied to the state and they're trying to use against us, then we are well on our way to beating the entire case.